We're here at the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com, where we discuss everything related to coffee and coffee farmers, coffee baristas, coffee culture, roasters. We cover every area of it. And I have been traveling around visiting dozens and dozens and dozens of cafes in Europe and the United States. And this summer, I was in Stockholm, which was experiencing its hottest summer in 200 years. And so it was in the mid 80s Fahrenheit, which is very unusual for there. And going to lots of cafes. And every once in a while I meet a barista or roaster that really catches my attention. And thus was the case in Stockholm. I went to Loftberg's, a cafe right in the midst of downtown Stockholm. And by the way, Stockholm, beautiful city, great place to go any time of year, but in the summer, it's spectacular. And usually in the 70s, it's a place to chill out a little bit if you're in the heat. I went to Loftberg's and I met Alexander Ntatsos, and I'm probably pronouncing his name incorrectly. I'll let him correct it. And he's originally from Greece, living in Sweden, tremendous barista, and recently competed in Brazil at the International Latte Art Competition. So skilled on many levels, and also when I went there, he made me some type of cold coffee drink. I'll have to ask him about that, which my wife keeps asking me if we can go back and get again. It was quite good and quite different. So, Alexander, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me today.
So, hello from Stockholm.
In Stockholm.
I don't know if I should say good morning to you.
No, yeah, it's morning here. We'll go by your time. It's a 7-hour time difference. I'm in the Chicago time zone right now. And by the way, there's an enormous coffee culture in Sweden. And I think one of the reasons, like Portland, Oregon, it's not that it's so cold in Stockholm. It's actually colder in Chicago. But it gets dark there. The sun comes up late and goes down early in the winter, just the opposite in the summer. We have the long days then. But I think when things get dark and a little bit dreary, people turn to coffee. Is that right?
Exactly. Right now, the night is getting longer and longer, so people are in need for coffee often.
Yep, and that's what we find in all the world, that when those seasons change. But coffee, of course, popular year round. Now, I wanted to ask you, Alexander, you're originally from Greece. When did you connect with coffee? When did you develop a passion for coffee? Was it in Greece? Was it in Sweden? When did it start?
Actually, I was born in Albania, and when I was 10, I moved to Greece.
Okay, so you started in Albania, yeah.
And I lived for 20 years in Greece. Well, I started working with coffee when I was teenage, around 16, 17. It started as a summer job.
Was that in Greece?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When I was like 16, 17 years old. So it started as a summer job. I'll keep working with the coffee during my studies.
Well, let me interrupt 1 second. What was the coffee scene like in Greece at that time when you were 16, 17? Was it specialty coffee? Was it what were people getting?
We used with commercial coffee. Specialty coffee is recently years in Greece, around 3, maybe 4 or 5 years. But 12 years ago, it was mostly commercial coffee, actually only commercial coffee. And I was lucky to work with a really good cafe, like it was called Flow Cafe. Where all the baristas were trained in a serious training. So it was something like Starbucks back in the good days. So it was the same concept, but we used to have like real training around coffee. So that was a good start for me.
Okay, and then how did you find yourself? What brought you to Stockholm?
I was looking for a master course when I was a student, so I was looking for a chance to move in Europe. And I thought that the Swedish or the Scandinavian culture will suit me. And when I finished my studies, I was waiting for the right time to move in Europe, and I had a chance to move in Sweden. Uh,
What
in
year
fact,
was that?
it was almost 2.5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the easy job for me to find was as barista, since I was working in Greece already for 10 years. And I was lucky enough to find a really good barista job here in Sweden, and work with specialty coffee at Loftbergs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here. I've been working also. I've been learning to roast. So since April, I'm learning to roast, and I hope the next year I'll be focused more on roasting.
Right. I noticed when I came into your cafe that there
Mhm.
was a room set aside, and it
Yeah,
looked like a training room. It looked like a room where people went in
we,
to
we
learn.
do we do we do have a training room.
Do you train baristas?
We train other baristas groups. I train there for the World Championship or the Swedish National Championship. But we have also a roaster machine, a Probat, where we roast our house coffee, and that's where I will focus the next year.
Right. We mentioned before that you were recently in the World Latte Art Championship in Brazil. Tell our listeners, some will be familiar with latte art, some won't. Tell us a little bit about latte art and how you train for the competition.
Well, I first compete in the Swedish National Championship in February, last February.
Yeah. How did
I've been
you do in
training.
that? How did you do in that competition?
I won,
Oh,
so
okay.
after I had to represent Sweden in the World Championship in Belo Horizonte in Brazil.
Uh-huh.
So I spent around 6 months on training,
Mm-hmm.
and in the summer, and after that, really intensive.
And
Um,
how do you explain latte art a little bit to our listeners who are less familiar with it. You go into a cafe, and if you get a really good barista, they'll do a nice pour and maybe put a little design in it. That is as much as most people know. But obviously, there's a lot more to it. And is this something you just picked up along the way, or did you study with somebody? How did you develop your skill set?
well, latte art, to perform a latte art, it's a lot of hours spending on training, and when you are able to perform a nice latte art, then everything else is already done well.
Uh-huh.
So you cannot have a latte art without having the proper milk, proper coffee. So as a guest, when you go somewhere and you receive a nice pattern, then you are for
Okay, you have to turn off your video. We're doing this over Skype. Keep your audio on, but your video, because it's affecting the connection. I'm in the
okay.
Midwest of the United States, and you're in Stockholm, so we're doing this. Okay, you can hear me now
Yeah,
still. All right, that's
yeah.
much better. Yeah, the
Okay, perfect.
bandwidth doesn't allow both. So for our listeners, through the miracle of modern technology,
Yeah.
I am able to interview people all over the world, and I am in Iowa now, of all places, where, believe it or not, there's quite a developing coffee culture. So give me some tips. I have tried doing a little latte art. My wife, who is much more
Hmm.
artistic than me, has tried it. But it's, believe me, folks, if you're out there and if you're going to try this, it's not easy to get those designs you see. And so, what is necessary? You mentioned the milk, the crema. When do you use it an espresso drink? How give us start to finish how you do
Exactly.
good latte art.
There are a few parameters.
Yeah,
Actually, latte art is pretty simple if you want to do the simple patterns, not the
right.
advanced. But if we want to go for the simple designs, it's pretty easy. There are a few parameters we need to take care of. If we
Right.
have the perfect crema for espresso with a nice extraction, and then the most important is the milk. If we have the elastic milk that it's not bubbly or silky, just a nice cream, and
That
then
now
when we
some
pour,
yeah. Go ahead. Wait
yeah,
1 second. Somebody told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes low, like 2% low fat milk, is better for
well,
latte art than whole milk. Is that true or not?
we usually use around 3%.
3%. Okay.
Exactly, because we have the right fats to keep the milk together. If it's low fat, like 0.5 or 1, it will be okay for a minute, but then when it's mixed with the milk, then we have the reaction. So it's preferred to have like maybe 3% will be enough.
Okay, so when you go to Brazil and you go to competition, is everybody using the same milk? I assume it's from
Exactly.
Brazil. And was it
We are-
real different than the Swedish milk?
Exactly. We are on the stage and we are using the same coffee, the same machine,
Right.
and the same milk. So the milk was almost the same. It was like 3% fat milk.
Right.
So I'll go back to the parameters when we perform a latte art. As I said, it's the nice cream of espresso, the milk, and then also the way we pour. We need to control our speed. We don't need to be too aggressive. We just need slow moves with the right speed and the right distance between.
I have a question. What's the distance between the pour and the cup? And do you at any point turn the cup to like a 45-degree angle? I'm trying to figure this out. I'll never be good as a latte artist because I don't have those skills.
Actually, we rotate both the cup and our milk pitcher.
We'll say that again.
We rotate both.
Okay.
The cup.
How do you rotate them?
Rotate so we can go as much closer. The pitcher can go as much closer to the crema.
Okay.
Of the espresso.
Right. So you keep it close, and then you pour it. What was your design in the competition in Brazil?
Well, it was not on one, but it was a lot. So I had to do a Viking ship, a fish. I had to do a bird.
Wow.
Another bird. So it was a lot of designs. Butterfly. We all have a story, and we need to try to share it with the patterns.
Right. That's fantastic. So one can assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I go to a cafe and the barista is pretty good, at least in their latte art, they're probably good in all other areas of the pour, of the extraction of the coffee and the pour as well.
Exactly.
Because you can't do good latte art with bad coffee. No. Is that right?
No, exactly. That's the one. What I'm always saying, that if you are able to do a latte art, you for sure you've been to all the first steps.
That's fantastic.
You cannot ever pass those steps. So if you ever go somewhere and you receive a nice pattern, drink it and enjoy it. For sure, everything is covered.
Right. And then what type of moving on to the coffee itself? When you drink coffee, what are your favorites? Do you like Ethiopian? Do you like Kenyan? Do you like Costa Rican? Do you like a lighter roast, a middle roast? What do you prefer?
I have a big gamma of favorite coffees. It depends on the method of we brew it. If we brew it on an espresso way, if you brew it on a hand drip or another extraction.
Right.
Then it's about the origin of the coffee. It's as we said, from Ethiopia, which part of Ethiopia, and then which process, if it's dry, if it's roast. And now I have a favorite method that I discovered is the fermented one.
Right.
It's a new process and people are starting.
Well, tell us about that. I'm not familiar with that. The fermented. Yeah, tell us about it. I've heard of it, but I'm not.
I'll try to explain it in simple words. They put the coffee, the cherries in a tank for like 2 to 4 days. It depends on the results they want to create or the profile they want to create. So the cherry stays on the tank for 2 to 4 days. They get fermented, and then they do the usual process. And then the coffee that we have, it's totally something new. Recently, I visited the farm in Brazil, Santa Rita farm, with amazing coffees. We know that the Brazilian coffee, there's a limit on the quality. It cannot go more than that. But those fermented coffees were from another world.
Now explain to me, what is the difference in the taste when you and I assume that you're having a pour over. How are you having the coffee? Are you cupping it? And what are the tastes? Describe them, how they might be different than the non-fermented.
You can still have the rich aftertaste of the coffee. Even if the coffee gets colder, you still have the flavors and the aftertaste more intensive.
Right.
The flavors depends on what process of fermented has happened. So you cannot describe it exactly what it is, but it's not like the usual coffee. It's not coffee; it's another drink.
Okay,
It's
now,
amazing.
okay.
If you ever have a
If
chance
I
to try fermented coffee,
Yeah.
try it.
All right. If I'm in New York, if I'm in Stockholm, any major city in the States or in Europe, can I get it? Can I get it at Loftberg's at your cafe?
It depends on the coffee bar if they're really into the new things, but I'm pretty sure you'll find it.
Where in
It's
Stockholm could I find it?
I'm still looking for that in Stockholm, to be honest.
Yeah. So this is maybe fourth wave coffee.
No,
It's coming.
it's pretty. Most of the coffee people knows it.
Right.
Know it.
Right.
So
But
I'm
it's
sure
not.
if
It's
you
not
look around,
commercially. It's not readily available. The consumer, like me, has not familiarized him or herself with it as yet. It sounds like.
yes,
It's
but you
something.
should definitely try it.
I will look for it and I'll ask for it. But
Those
I get
fermented
to a lot of. I've been to probably a dozen cafes in the last 2 weeks, and I haven't seen it. So I will ask for it. And hey, another thing I want to ask you about, and on a different subject. Okay,
Mhm,
we have espresso. We have milk drinks like cappuccino.
mhm,
One of the things, a company that's I knew from and I should say I spent 2 or 3 months a year in Sweden every year. My wife is from there, and I this a lot of people are using oat milk, and there's a company out of Sweden, I believe it's Oatly,
exactly.
Oatly. I come back to I was in this Sweden for 2 months this summer. I came back in September. I was in the Midwest. I was in Chicago, New York. I went to a lot of cities. This stuff Oatly is selling off the shelves. You can't get it. All the top cafes are having it.
And
It's come in huge demand.
exactly.
Tell me what. And I gotta say, I didn't think in a coffee milk drink I would like anything other than milk. But this stuff is fabulous, and I do both, and I drink espresso and I drink pour over without milk. I do everything. But when I this is the first time there's been a milk substitute that I feel good about. Tell me about it, your experience with it, and why do you think it's so incredibly popular now? You can't buy it in the States; it sells out. Yeah.
Exactly. We usually run out of the milk of Oatly from the factory. This company is doing a really good job, not now, but at least for 20 years. But the market wasn't ready to accept it. It's really, as a product, it's really healthy. It has the perfect sweetness for the coffee. So those two together make really good pair. Um,
Yes, I want to say I was just in St. Louis, and there's a cafe there, one of my favorite, Sump,
mhm.
and a guy Scott that is the owner of it. He spent huge amount of time sourcing the best milks he could get, the best milk he could get to
Mhm.
make milk
Mhm.
drinks, and now he does that still, but he also uses Oatly because it's in demand, and he said, look, if it doesn't kill the flavors of the coffee like some other non-milk drinks might do.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
It has this soft texture and flavor that goes together with the coffee. When we drink the normal milk with the espresso, the espresso go into the milk, so we mostly taste the milk, and especially when it's like burnt or with a really high temperature, we then barely feel the coffee on it.
right,
So that's the thing with Oatly. It goes together with the coffee, and you truly can enjoy it.
right. And how is it for latte art?
Of course, you cannot do those really advanced patterns, but you still can do pretty well level of latte art.
And are you getting a lot of demand for it there in Stockholm as well?
Yeah, Swedish culture is really careful
Change.
with the change. So they're trying to keep the health style. So like eating healthy, drinking healthy, and Oatly is one of the uh, big points for it.
Hmm.
So they have adapted it really well.
Right. Once again, the Swedes have contributed to the world of coffee because Oatly comes out of Sweden. Tell me about your native Greece. When you go back there, what's the
Yeah.
coffee scene? Is specialty coffee coming on strong? I know it's
It,
starting to
yeah.
develop in Italy, but Italy's very set in their ways. What is the Greek coffee culture like, and how has it changed, and what's going on there
Well,
now?
if we go 20 years back, we had this famous cold coffee. It was like cold frappe. It's like a moment coffee, and that was 20 years ago. If you go 10 years ago, we had the cold edition of espresso. So we used to chill espresso, and that's so popular, and not even the hand drip now with the really good coffees can overpass it. So our most famous product is chilling the espresso and drink it. However, Greeks likes to try new things, and if you visit now Athens, there are so good coffee bars which has roasteries inside, and they roast their coffee. So the quality is really good in Athens.
Fantastic.
And of course, Greece has a lot of successful baristas on World Championship, like Coffee in Good Spirits or Brewing or Latte Art. They are really good. They have like first places or finals. They're doing really good.
Fantastic. Well, Greek is a land of great art and artists, and always has been. And so I'm sure in when it comes to latte art, they will be a real contender. And also, what we're noticing is all over, first in Northern Europe, but now in Southern Europe, this third wave where this new arena of coffee, the lighter roast and single original, is catching on. A couple of final questions. How much coffee do you consume in a day, and how do you consume it?
Well, I start home with a filter coffee, and now I have also espresso machine. So I started also with an espresso on the way out.
Wait, so you have an espresso machine at home, and you also have what do you use? A pour over, a V60, a Chemex?
I use a pour over V60 or Calita. I change one day then one, and the other day the next one.
So you have one in the morning, then you come
two coffees. It depends because I used to work like 10 o'clock, so I woke up early 7, so I have plenty of time to have two coffees.
Now, when you do the pour over, you use what bean do you like? You're using a single origin. How do you hand grind it? Do you have a grinding machine?
I do have two grinders actually, one for pour over and one for the espresso. Of course, I'm using. I roast the coffee by myself at Stockholm.
Right.
So for my espresso, I'm using Brazilian coffee from 3 farms.
Okay.
It is our house coffee that we roast and you use, and it's pretty chocolatey and nutty and really balanced. So I truly enjoy it.
Is it a blend or a single origin on the espresso?
It is a blend. It is from 3.
Oh, from the 3 farms. Okay.
So that gives us this balance with those other flavors. A really good quality. And for my pour over, I'm using our season coffee, and it could be like Ethiopian Yirgacheffe or from Rwanda. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Yep.
So we have 5 coffees that we roast by ourselves in our coffee bar. So I'm choosing one of those for pour over and Brazil for espresso.
Hey, your video came back on. You should turn your video off.
I'm trying to fix that.
Okay, we get a good sound though.
Yes.
Not a problem. Okay, there we go. Yes. So you have, let's say, 1 or 2 cups before you leave. Then how many cups during the day and anything at night? Yeah.
Okay, during my work shift, I try a lot of coffee.
All right.
I never drink. Actually, I don't drink 1 cup of coffee, but I'm always trying to taste it and see if everything was okay.
Right.
So during the day, I'm always trying how my espresso is or how my filter coffee is. So during the day, my work shift, I drink a little bit of coffee all the time.
Fantastic. And then at night, anything?
Well, when I come back home, I do another hand drip or a green tea.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's not unlike my schedule. Of course, you are more skilled at making it
Well,
perfectly.
I'm really lucky. When I drink coffee, I can sleep immediately.
Yeah, me too. My wife, other people don't understand it, but I'll do a pour over with a Chemex, or I'll use an AeroPress at
Yeah,
night, and
exactly.
I go right to sleep, no problem.
I do
I
the
know people.
same,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So that I'm also Southern European. My family's from Italy, so maybe Greeks and Italians, we have an immunity
Maybe,
because it's been in
maybe.
our culture for so long. But anyway,
Exactly.
hey, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Alexander, and
My
tell us where you're
pleasure.
located. Tell everybody where you're located in
Where
Stockholm.
we are in the center of Stockholm, it's called Östermalm, and we are in the street Kungsgatan 3.
King Street, and it's a
Yes.
great city, one of the greatest, most beautiful cities in the world, unquestionably. Stockholm. I also love Gothenburg and Oslo and Copenhagen, that area of the world. And I haven't spent time yet in Finland, but also great coffee there. Some tremendous people. I had Michaela Gervard on recently, the former Finnish barista champ, now head of personnel at Coffee Collective in Copenhagen. But all great places. Go to Stockholm. Go to Loftberg's. Ask for Alexander, and learn more about coffee. So I want to wish you continued and great success in your work. And
Thank you.
again, I one of the things I like about coffee is people come into your cafe, you serve them a coffee, and for many people, that's going to be the happiest few moments of their day. And
That's true.
so it's a great work that you do.
Thank you.
All right, all the best.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
bye.